Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We're going to wait just a moment for a few more people to come into the room. Okay. And I'll be happy to answer your questions at the end of the presentations. Please pop them in the Q&A box, not the chat box. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, let's jump in here and get started. Welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me. Please pop your questions into the Q&A box, and I will be sure to answer them at the end of the presentation. Alrighty, so let's get going and talking about the thyroid and how your adrenal function directly affects your thyroid function. But I'm going to begin first with explaining the thyroid, the 101 of the thyroid, and then I'll show you the connection of the two and what we can do about it. Okay. So just a really quick high-level overview of the endocrine system. So the major players in the endocrine system are your pineal gland, your hypothalamus, which are like your literal head office, okay? The pituitary, which has a very direct influence on the thyroid. Then the thyroid, which is in your neck. The parathyroid, which governs calcium balance in the body. The thymus, which is responsible for a lot of your immune function. Your adrenal glands, your glands of stress. They're sitting on here on top of your kidneys. And then your pancreas, which is part of your digestive system, actually, but it's actually an endocrine organ. And then ovaries for women and testes for men. So the function of your hormones, they actually have way more functions than what you would imagine. They actually govern your chemical composition and the volume of your extracellular fluid all over your body. Okay. Your glandular secretions, your metabolism and energy balance, which is one of the main things that we think about, your circadian rhythms, sleep. It's very much governed by your hormones, contraction of your muscle fiber, some of your immune functions, your growth and development, and of course your reproductive systems are all part of your hormonal system. So it's really like a hormonal messenger system. Your body's going to create more than 100 hormones. And these are like messengers transferring information from one set of cells to the other, which really is like spark plugs, which control all of these hormonal functions that we just discussed. So you see, it's not just the thyroid, okay? Now, when we talk about thyroid, we are not only talking about the organ that is sitting in your neck, your butterfly-shaped organ that's in your gland of your neck. Okay, that is only one part of the entire thyroid system. It really is easier to refer to it as the thyroid cascade, all right? Because it all begins with the hypothalamus, and which is located in the center of your brain. And the hypothalamus secretes TRH, which is thyroid releasing hormone. And that activates the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland secretes the TSH, which is the thyroid stimulating hormone. And that sends the message to the thyroid to secrete the two thyroid hormones, which is T4 and T3. Okay. Now, at that point, the thyroid is pushing out the T4 and the T3, and you know, it's going to how much hormone it's going to secrete depends on the messages that come from the hypothalamus and the and the pituitary is how the thyroid knows how much to push out. Okay, and it's also influenced by the adrenals the HPA, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, which tells the thyroid, the pituitary how much hormone to tell the thyroid to push out. Okay. Now, the thing is that the majority of the thyroid hormone that is secreted is in the form of T4. Now, T4 is the main amount that's secreted. However, the body cannot take up T4 directly. Only a tiny amount, maybe like 15, 16% of T4 can get used at cellular level directly. Most of it has to be converted from T4 to T3 to actually be used at cellular level. But it's not that simple. You've got different forms of T4 and T3, okay? You've got free T3 and T4, and this is the form of T4 that is circulating around the body and can easily enter the body tissues as it's needed. And then you've got bound T3 and T4, and this is the form of thyroid hormone that is bound to proteins, okay, and can't, is not actually ready to go into the tissues. Now, you can't have, it's kind of almost like they should be in a waiting zone when they're bound, and they should be released to free T4 and T3 when they can actually be used by the body at cellular level. And herein is where a lot of the issues go wrong, okay? Because you've got your thyroid pushing out your T4 and your T3. And if it all just went T4, converted from bound to free and used at cellular level, it will be really peachy. But unfortunately, a lot of the big issue that happens is that your T4 gets shunted into a storage hormone called reverse T3. And this is actually designed to slow down your metabolism directly. Historically, it would be what the body would do in times of extreme stress like war or time of famine. It would actually slow down the metabolism as a way of preserving energy and almost shutting down the metabolism to keep that person alive, okay? But what happens to us in our modern world, where we are subjected to an enormous amount of stress on a daily ongoing basis, is that this is where a lot of the issue of thyroid function gets hijacked, is by T4 getting shuttled into reverse T3 instead of being converted into free T3 and actually used by the body at cellular level. You see, when the body shuttles T4 into reverse T3, it's literally like it's gone to jail. It can't get used for anything, all right? And adding thyroid hormone is not really going to cure the problem, okay? The problem needs to be cured by addressing the adrenal stress. So there are many signs and symptoms of too much or too little thyroid in the hormone in the body, which is what can happen when the HPA axis becomes unbalanced, all right? If you have got too much T4 and T3 in the body, this is hyperthyroidism. And this is really somebody that's quite sweaty, clammy, anxious, very brittle hair, light or menstrual periods. They will have a very wired and tired look about them, okay? Sweat a lot or very sensitive to high temperatures, a lot of trembling. So hyperthyroidism is not as common as the one that we know the most of. And hyperthyroidism can lead to Graves' disease, by the way. Okay, so the more common is hypothyroidism, okay? And this is the underactive thyroid. And this is when somebody can't sleep, exhausted all the time, difficulty concentrating, brain fog, dry skin and hair, feeling very depressed, feeling very sensitive to cold temperatures, heavy periods, joint and muscle pain. But you can see how a lot of the symptoms can get confused one for the other, okay? And this is really too little thyroid hormone in the body, and hyperthyroidism does typically respond quite well to thyroid hormone. So the other things that can go wrong with the thyroid is the thyroid nodule. Now, thyroid nodules are quite prevalent, more prevalent in women than in men, even though men do get them. And less than 1 in 20 case is typically cancerous. What is it? It's a thyroid nodule that's filled, it's a tissue that's become filled with blood or other fluid, like a pus type fluid. and it's extremely common. At some point in most women's life, they would have had a thyroid nodule. Okay, if your voice is very hoarse, you feel dry and scratchy, difficulty swallowing, those are some symptoms that you may have a thyroid nodule. And they actually respond quite well to iodine therapy. Typically, thyroid nodules do, or castor oil packs on the thyroid. It can be detected by a thyroid ultrasound, and it can be biopsied to see if it's cancerous. And then the other thyroid condition is Hashimoto's disease. And this is an autoimmune disease where, instead of where the body, the immune system is malfunctioning and basically attacking itself. So, instead of protecting the body's healthy cells, the malfunctioning immune cells are actually attacking them. So you've got malfunctioning immune cells actually attacking the thyroid. So if you have hypothyroid symptoms, it is a good idea to have your practitioner run a panel to check if you have an autoimmune thyroid disease, anti-thyroid antibody test. Everyone is going to have some low level of antithyroid that's normal, but it just depends on the level of the antithyroid to know if it's actually an autoimmune disease like Hashimoto's. And we now know that it's not a life sentence, that it absolutely can be turned around and be healed. So what went wrong with testing? In 1974, the what were they called? The American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists came out with thyroid hormone testing. And guess what? The gold standard was one test, the TSH. That's it, one test. So they were testing the level of TSH in the body, which is really what, the pituitary speaking to the thyroid, and judging that by saying, okay, does this person have good thyroid function? And you can see now that is like taking a car to the mechanic and diagnosing it without actually lifting the hood. That's what was happening for years and years and years. And unfortunately, I still run into practitioners that actually do that. So the lab range was also done by a snapshot of the population. And it was decided that somewhere between 0.5 and 5.5, which is a huge lab range, was the normal range for testing. And it's not only thyroid that I see this in many different types of lab testing. This is what we see, okay? And if you fell into that lab range, you were normal. And if you didn't fall into that lab range, typically you were treated with T4 only hormone, Synthroid, or levoxythyroid, different generic brands of the same thing, which is T4 only hormone. And you can see that in most cases, people are not missing T4. It's their inability to convert the T4 to T3. So adding more T4 is really like adding the wrong ingredient to and expect, to get a great outcome. Now, this is just an example that I found online of a thyroid lab test range, okay? You will find ones that fluctuate, that have different ranges. And when you go to your practitioner, different practitioners have different tests that they like to include in their thyroid lab range. So, of course, you always want to test the TSH. You want to see, what is the TSH? And, you can see that this one is saying that the standard lab range is 0.4 to 4.2. I mean, so I still see 5.5 on labs at times. But this optimal range here is 0.5 to 2.5. And honestly, anytime I see anything creeping over 1.5, it's time to pay attention, okay? Because you really want it in that sweet spot, the TSH. By the way, thyroid hormones do fluctuate. All right. So if you have a test and you have a test like 2 months later, it can fluctuate. All right. And then your T3 and T4 tests. Sometimes you'll see on a test total T3 or total T4, and that's when it's a measure of the 3 and the bound T3 together. Okay. So in this case, this is what that looks like, is that's the total T3 and the total T4, okay? And then the 3T4 and the 3T3 is what's actually available to be used at cellular level. So you want to make sure that your practitioner is doing enough of a cascade snapshot to know, to be able to see that conversion and to see what's really going on there. Okay. Now, there's the reverse T3 number, and you really are looking for anything less than 15 is ideal. All right. I mean, the standard reference range is up to 25, and anything in the high 15s or 20s is a problem. Then your reverse T3 is a sign of adrenal stress. And I've seen higher numbers than that too, you know. And that means that, you know, the thyroid hormone has gone to jail, and it's not available for conversion and to be used at cellular level. Okay, so what are all the factors that affect the thyroid and cause the thyroid to malfunction? And I'm getting there, I promise. I'm getting to the adrenals. All right, so we want to, of course, keep working on moving the neurotoxins. I think that as Pompa clients, I don't really need to go into a bunch of detail with that, but we know that, you know, it's the heavy metals, but it's also the air pollution, the pesticides. A really big one is the glyphosate and plastic, okay? Toxins from plastic, forever chemicals, PFAS. If you have not seen the documentary on Netflix called Dark Waters, I urge you to watch that documentary, Dark Waters. It will make you rethink all of what's in your kitchen that you're cooking your food with, and that you have an adequate method of cleaning your water. Absolutely. So we know that these toxic chemicals damage your hormones at cellular level. It's damaging your cell receptors. So that means that your hormones, the messages can't come through, okay, because your cell receptors themselves, okay, so it's like a cell phone tire that the actual antenna are broken off, is what these heavy metals and pesticides do to us at cellular level, which is why Dr. Pompa's method of fix the cell is so relevant, okay? But at the same time, we want to pay attention to all of the other factors. Now, Linda does a really good presentation on blood glucose, which I highly recommend that you go and see on blood sugar management, okay? Because unchecked blood glucose and insulin is the most common form of hormone resistance. And we see this all the time, and it's extremely inflammatory and extremely damaging to the body at cellular level. And this is really where you're eating too many sugars inconsistently. Your body has a highs and lows of yo-yo of blood sugar. And really what happens is that when you have unchecked blood glucose and insulin levels, it means, again, the cell is becoming resistant to making insulin. And it's pretty much the same principle of neurotoxins, okay? And this can really spiral into type 2 diabetes, okay? Damage at cellular level, and inflammatory cytokines that are flooding the body. Inflammation is everything. And then the next thing that you really want to be aware of is your fats. And I do a whole separate presentation on this because I'm passionate about this topic. So once again, your cell, the cell has, every single cell, of which we have trillions, has two layers called the phospholipid bilayer. There's your clue. Lipids. Our cells are made up of layers of fats, like a double strand of pearls. That's the phospholipid bilayer, okay? And interspersed around the cell surface, you have these receptor sites, and imagine them being like cell towers. And the receptor sites is where your nutrients go into the cell, and your toxins come out of the cell, and those are also your hormone binding receptor sites. And our damaged fats literally jam into the receptor sites and block them, okay? So when you eat your beautiful anti-inflammatory fats, like your Inflammar 4, which is an amazing product, we've got others in the store which are great, the Pure Form Omegas, and the Balance Oil Phosphatidylcholine is another one of my favorites, okay? Great for cell membrane repair. And you're eating all your clean oils, okay? The Andreas seed oils, the only seed oils we recommend. And you're doing avocados and clean nuts and fish and that sort of thing, all right? Those are the things that are going to help to repair you at cellular level and help to really keep your cells humming along nicely. Now, when you look at this image, I'm sorry if it's confusing. I'm not talking about all cheese and ice cream. Okay. I mean the processed stuff. Eating raw cheeses, grass-fed cheeses is great. Okay. In moderation, of course. I don't view that as being a major food. I view that more as being a supplement to your plate. Ice cream, you know, we all love ice cream. But do yourself a favor and go, just out of a fun exercise, go in the supermarket and read the ingredients in those commercial ice creams. I saw on social media where someone took one of those drumstick ice creams and left it outside, and it never fully melted. It just sort of had this liquidy goop that came out, but it held its shape. Okay, because it's just a bunch of chemicals holding it together. So you want the ingredients in your ice cream to be really, you know, one hand or less is what you want in there. And of course, moderation. And French fries is another one that is extremely toxic to you at cellular level. So really, I know it's very difficult to find restaurants that cook with clean seed oils, but do the best you can. Clean up your own kitchen, okay? Because as I said, damaging at cellular level, big time damaging at cellular level. And then another big one is iodine deficiency, okay? I speak separately on iodine. So about 59 and 64% of T4 and T3 respectively is actually made up of iodine. All right. So if you are not having enough iodine in your diet, your body does not have the basic building block to make your thyroid hormone, which is why the iodine protocol is really prevalent. Many people do the iodine protocol. Now, there are caveats for iodine. The reason why the autoimmune thyroid protocol is literal drops of TMI is because you cannot do iodine. It's very difficult for the body to take it up at cellular level. You have to do iodine low and slow, because if you do too much too quickly, it'll create negative feedback where it'll actually affect your production of thyroid hormone when it's too much too quickly. Okay. So a great way to do this is to look at eating iodine-rich foods, seafood, eggs, some dairy has iodine in it. Kelp is another great source. If you can get clean source of kelp, I like those kelp sheets, eating those as a snack. You can also get dulse flakes that you put on your food for seasoning, and that's a great source of iodine. All right, and finally, drum roll please, she gets to the adrenal glands. All right, so I've saved the best for last, because this is hands down one of the biggest influences of thyroid hormone disruption is your adrenal function. So, earlier I talked about the HPA axis, okay? The hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. So here's your adrenal glands. They're like little Doritos size, walnut size, sitting on top of your kidneys, and they are your glands of stress. Now, the thing is, we have to be able to respond to stress. If we weren't able to respond to stress, we would literally be like noodles. So we would just be we couldn't function. We would just be, we'd have absolutely no oomph. So you have to have cortisol in your body to keep you bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and so that you can respond not only to stressors, like let's say you have to put your foot down to get out of a car crash, but daily stressors, the phone rings and you reach to get it, that sort of thing. Okay. So your adrenal glands command the function of the steroid hormones in your body, okay, like your estrogen, your progesterone, your steroids, your cortisone, and your hormones of stress, which is your epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, which is your feel-good hormone. So the hypothalamus and the pituitary control how much is produced, and the adrenal glands are a little bit like a regulator, and they should be controlling how much is released. Okay. The problems occur when you are exposed to constant barrage of stress over a long period of time. Because what will happen is that your adrenal glands will respond to this constant barrage of stress by pumping out more cortisol, okay? And in turn, pumping out, triggering all of the relevant stress hormones, okay? So if you're pumping out cortisol and epinephrine, norepinephrine. Okay, it's going to affect your hormones. It's going to affect the production of your estrogen, your progesterone, and eventually, what will happen is that your cells become resistant to the cortisol that's being pumped out, and this is how you are heading towards adrenal fatigue. So you see, okay, so I meant to put that up while I talked about that, but yeah, there you go. So the hypothalamus and pituitary and the adrenals control how much is used. Now, what are these stressors that are making us, that are affecting the adrenal glands so much? And it's more than just what you would think is obvious. Okay, it's more than just I hate my job and I'm stressed out and I'm stuck in rush hour traffic and I can't pay the bills. Okay, it can be things like the toxins we talked about. It could be if you have an acute viral infection, like let's say Epstein-Barr virus or Lyme, that is creating a stressor and it's affecting your HPA axis. If you have allergies, smoking, not sleeping, poor eating habits, of course, not exercising, psychological stress, not taking time to relax, death of a loved one, a wound that's slow healing. So all of these things are the stressors that are going in the bucket and affecting your endocrine function in a really big way. And eventually, when the adrenal glands can no longer pump out the cortisol and they can no longer respond, this is what we call adrenal fatigue, also known as burnout. Okay. Now, the effect that it has on the thyroid gland is that it creates thyroid hormone resistance, because basically your thyroid hormone is circulating in your blood, but for it to have a physiological effect, it's got to be activated on the receptors, on the cell receptors. So when you've got these inflammatory cytokines from too much cortisol, it's creating a resistance. So the thyroid hormone is knocking on the cell door and the cell door is not opening because the receptors are damaged by the inflammatory cytokines. Okay. So cortisol has a really, really prolonged and profound effect, because it's also going to affect the liver's ability to clear the excess estrogen from the blood. Because when you've got excess estrogen in the body, this is going to affect your levels of a hormone called TBG, which is your thyroid binding globulin. So what happens is that your thyroid hormone is not getting released into T3. And so it's then also affecting your conversion of T4 to T3, because your thyroid is staying bound. And guess what? Then it gets shuttled down into reverse T3. Okay. So yeah, it's affecting the conversion and it's making it bound into reverse T3 is basically what happens when you have constant flood of cortisol and stress hormones in the body. And there's different stages of adrenal fatigue. Wired for sound is really where most people actually feel pretty good. They might feel a little bit tired in the morning and need a cup of coffee to get going. Okay. But as soon as they hit the shower, they're on the road and they are going for it, feeling fantastic. So they've got high levels of cortisol and they've got high neurotransmitters. And so this is what we call the supernova. Okay. A lot of people are operating in this mode and feeling pretty good and this can go on for years, of feeling pretty good operating like that, managing stress well and feeling good. Then what happens is that you've got constant elevated cortisol and it starts to affect your neurotransmitters, because the neurotransmitters cannot deal with all of this cortisol. Okay. And then a lot of infections set in and a lot of allergies, and it's the precursor to an autoimmune disease that happens at that point. And eventually what happens is that the body then says, we can no longer pump out this cortisol, and the adrenal glands are shutting down. So your cortisol levels are dropping, but your neurotransmitters cannot do their job to bridge the gap. A lot of inflammation, a lot of autoimmune diseases fitting at that point. And the last stage is a chronic stage. This is really where someone has Addison's disease, adrenal insufficiency, and you really are a lymph noodle and you just cannot function. Okay. So it's really important to pay attention to the stages of adrenal fatigue and how your body is doing. All right. So how are we going to fix it? Once again, we're going to remove the toxins. I don't even need to elaborate. You're all so smart. You know all about this. Okay. You're going to manage your blood sugar. Avoid the high and lows. Talk to your coach about what the right diet for you is. And fasting and intermittent fasting may not be the right thing for you immediately. It may create more stress. If you are very stressed out, if you are very tired, you may just need to focus on eating consistently, making sure that you are getting protein, with each meal, and that you are having the right carbohydrates at the right time. Okay. Pay attention to your digestion. I do a whole separate presentation on digestion. Many of the other coaches do. Really, it sounds so simple, but it is so key to your healing. All right. Just, I want to throw this in here, that your digestion function and your bile function is really important, because did you know that around 20% of your thyroid hormone of T4 to T3 happens because of bile? Okay. So your digestion helps with your thyroid hormone conversion. Make sure that you are well hydrated, otherwise the cells can't do their job. Really focus on ways to manage your inflammation. Eat the good fats. Be really wary of the bad fats. And also look at some adaptogenic herbs. We've got some wonderful ones in the store, like the Adrenal Synergy. Synergy is great. I have several clients in the Adrenal Synergy, and they really love it. They feel great. It's really helped them a lot. There's another product called Calm by Systemic Formulas that's helped a lot of people. And I know when you're tired, it's really easy to want to hit the coffee. Okay. I really love my coffee, but I had to really curb my enthusiasm and reduce the amount that I was having, because, coffee is very dehydrating. And, if you are having too much coffee on an empty stomach in the morning, it's raising your cortisol levels, but then it's also continuing to raise your cortisol levels if you are not balancing what you're eating. Okay. Sleep cannot be understated, how important sleep is. Okay, we've seen a lot of people do really well by adding relaxing herbs like hops, passion flower, adding some magnesium. Okay, magnesium malate or glycinate helps a lot of people. Avoiding caffeine after 4 in the afternoon, and reducing your EMF exposure. Okay, get yourself a cheap timer switch on Amazon and make sure that your Wi-Fi gets shut down at night. Be in bed early. Your sleep, quality of sleep between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., your circadian rhythms, that is the best time for you to get quality sleep. If you're going to bed too late, especially now in summer where it's getting light early, your circadian rhythms are not going to respond as well. So try to really go to bed earlier, and do that. And then, ways to help recover. Exercise. And I don't mean that if you're suffering from adrenal fatigue that you're going to go and train for a marathon or do big Zumba classes. Okay. Do exercise that's enjoyable, meditative type exercises, somatic release workouts, meditative exercises, and laugh. If you've had a really stressful time, go pick a really funny movie and just laugh. It can make a huge difference to stress relief. And then really assessing your life and going, what are my energy robbers? Is it the way that I'm talking to myself? The way that many of us talk to ourselves, we would not speak to our loved ones the way we speak to ourselves, and the body keeps score. All right. So really speak to yourself kindly. Be kind to yourself. And don't forget that your body's ability to heal is greater than anyone has permitted you to believe. Thank you. All right. Let me see what I've got for questions. Who do I have? Do the adrenals also affect testosterone in men? Absolutely, Shayna. 100% absolutely. Peter asked, I've had adrenal Hashimoto's, super low testosterone entire life. The doctor thought it was a girl, I think maybe due to very low testosterone. Some typos here. I'm trying to, what protocol report should I add to assist? Okay. All right. I'm trying to decipher what you've written to me here. You're welcome, Shayna. Okay, so all right. So super low testosterone, um, it can be your hormonal balance, okay? And it could be estrogen dominance and your body's inability to clear estrogen, which could be, as we talked about earlier, what is happening because of the thyroid binding hormone, the TBG, okay? It's meaning that your body cannot move testosterone. I mean, it can move estrogen. And if you're not clearing estrogen, it's going to affect testosterone and progesterone in the body. So I would work on, work with a functional doctor that you can get a saliva hormonal test that they do test during different part of the day to see what all of your hormones are doing. And maybe you need something possibly, I'm not telling you to go do this without knowing if it's right for you, but if the issue is estrogen, maybe you need a product like DIM, which helps to move estrogen. That could be the issue. Okay. So when you assess everything I've talked about, do you feel that you're addressing all of the different things we talked about? Okay. Because I want you really to remember that so often people want to go and get a hormone in a pill and say, fix me, but they're not looking at all of the different things. All right. So there's different tests that different doctors run. A good example is the Dutch hormone test, like DUTCH, Dutch hormone test is a good one. Okay. Yeah. Alrighty. But yeah, just really, really analyze what you're doing and all of the different things that I talked about. Okay. How are you doing in all of those categories? How's your digestion? Are you managing inflammation? Are you moving the right kind of movement? Are you getting enough sleep? Because as I said, going and getting hormones is not the answer if you're not addressing all of those upstream things. Okay. I don't have a doctor to recommend. I'm sorry. Okay. Alrighty. Alrighty. Any more questions for me today? You could ask your coach or ask in the Facebook group if there's someone there. Okay. Alrighty. Patty said, I went off psych meds and started with major hot flashes. Then I started thyroid protocol. So Patty, has the thyroid protocol helped the hot flashes? Um, uh, do not do FB, it's bad. Oh, okay. Patty, so has the thyroid protocol helped your hot flashes, Patty? Okay. It could be that I've hot and cold throughout the day. It's horrible. Yeah, I'm so sorry. For you, I really would focus on supportive therapies like castor oil packs, dry brushing, maybe some red light therapy, and you could talk to your coach because you might actually do better with having some we've got some products, Femicrine in the store is like a broad spectrum female hormonal support product, and something like that could really help you. Okay. Sue says, I have Hashimoto's. When would be the best time in the program to do the thyroid protocol? I would say, Sue, that you could start right away, but you really want to do the autoimmune protocol and just keep it low and slow if you're in the beginning of the program. Okay. You're welcome, Patty. All righty. Any more questions for me? All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, guys. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.